Welcome to Business on Purpose, the podcast for hardworking entrepreneurs who drive our economy. I'm your host, Barry Barrett, and as a sales leader and business owner, I understand the challenges that come with entrepreneurship. Each episode, I am interviewing business owners who have faced the same struggles you have. Low revenue, a lack of scalability in their sales force. Together, we're going to explore their entrepreneurial journey and uncover the valuable lessons they've learned along the way. From mentors to advice, we'll dive deep into what has helped these business owners get unstuck and move forward towards success. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned entrepreneur, the podcast is for you. Be sure and follow and subscribe to this podcast as we learn from the experiences of successful business owners and navigate the road to entrepreneurship together. Let's get started. How's one of my favorite people?
I am healthy and happy, and life is good, man. God has blessed my socks off, and I got a great protege that bought the business, and I'm teaching Bible for the 22nd year in community Bible study, and life is good.
One of the most impactful moments, and I know this can sound like very grave, very like one of the most impactful moments anybody's ever had in my life was we were at a BLIG meeting, and for if this shows in any that it's a 20 group for automotive repair, and we were talking about impacting someone's life that you're close to, and I was getting ready to train them, and I may have already been training them. I think they were there, and it's been a couple of years ago. And you just stopped in the hall, didn't care who was around, and you prayed over that. And I'm like, this dude, I mean, I get choked up right now thinking about it. I'm like, this guy is a guy I should know. And I knew you already, but that's just one of the moments in my life that I'm like, okay, this is what a man of God does. I appreciate that. Yeah. I tell people, Charlie Tremendous Jones said, you'll be the same person in 10 years as you are today, except for the people that you meet and the books that you read. Now you can look, these are a few of the books that I read, but the people that I meet are just like you. And that's what really made me want to do this podcast. I do believe that each one should teach one, and life's about mentorship. And I am where I am because of the people that have graciously given me their time and effort to mentor me. Some of them, most honestly, I never paid a dime, and some I pay, and I pay people today to mentor me. So when I could afford it, I started paying for it. And when I couldn't afford it, I find that you just have to be a good person, and those people will just help you. It's amazing. So that's what this podcast is about. It's about mentorship. It is a sales focused for the most part. I know you're not in sales, but you have driven revenue. You have driven sales, right? We're all an influence. We're always trading on ideas more than anything. So that's where we're at today. So without further ado, this is my guest, Greg Bednar. He is one of the finest humans that you're going to meet on planet Earth. He makes impacts in people's lives. He's rolling his eyes at you. You can't see it right now. He's rolling his eyes at me. He knows it, right? He believes it. And because he is who he is, and he's blessed by who he's blessed by, that's why he makes that impact. So he knows he's just a man, but he is one of the men that can impact lives better than anybody, or as good as anybody that I know. So welcome, Mr. Greg Bednar.
It's my pleasure to be here, Barry. I've always held you in the highest regard.
I appreciate that so much. So let's get started. And one of the questions that I'll just ask people is like, where did you get your start, and how did you get your start?
Now, when you say start, that's a loaded question. You talking about in the automotive repair world, or just in career general, or?
Mr. Bednar, this is your story. You tell me where your start is, where you went down the road to becoming the person that you are today.
Okay. Wow. So that's going to go back to the summer of 1969. And I was 12 years old. So you do the math, that makes me 65. So you don't have to whip out your calculator. And we grew up in a suburb of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And one of my friends lived right up the road from me, Brad Olson, and his family was a family of great faith. And by the way, for all of your listeners, you're going to hear my faith story woven throughout this whole discussion, because that's just in my DNA. But Brad's family was this tremendous family of faith. My mom and dad, my family were moral people, good people, but they didn't have a relationship with the Father or with his son, Jesus. And this family, Brad's family, did. And there was just something that attracted me to that at 12 years old. And at a small community church in 1969, I committed my life to following Jesus and making him my marker. What was going to be, how was I going to be made? And so I followed him. That's where it started, Barry, because it reordered my definition of good, bad, right, wrong, up, down. And then fast forward through high school, a stint in the U.S. Air Force. I get out, I go to college. I'm married to my dear wife, who I'm now married to for 46 years. And we start this life together after I graduate from Minnesota State Mankato. And my career takes its turns and twists in telecommunications, software development, and professional fundraising in the higher education sector, and eventually an entrepreneur, and I buy my own business. But through it all, what made me who I am, I am, is this moral compass that I drew from scripture, and what I drew from good biblical teaching from people that God put in my path that could, as you said, mentor me, shape me, mold me, and make me the person that I would be, especially as I became an entrepreneur. Because once you own a business, there are no manuals anymore. You have to figure it out yourself. And that's when I met you, Barry, because I was a part of that Blake group. And the old adage, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
In spades. And that's where it all started.
Yeah, we call that the unconsciously incompetent, you know, and we all have it. We all have their little niche. And honestly, I thought I knew more than I did back then. So just so you know, I'm like, now I know less than I did. Just so you know.
Yes.
And about sales, I'm like, I know less about sales today than I knew when I met you. That's
Life
good.
has a way of humbling you.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. How'd you get your start? Now, I know you became a successful automotive repair business owner. Tell me how you got that start, and also who'd you find to mentor you in the beginning?
Yeah, good question. So I was 53 years old.
Hold on. That's unbelievable to me. You're 53 years old. You start a business. I sit here and I'm like, I'm 46. I feel extremely young, but sometimes in the day-to-day grind, I feel extremely old. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I sure do.
And when I hear you start at 53, I'm like, oh man, I haven't even started yet. This is great. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was 53, and I always knew I wanted to own my own business. I always wanted to be my own chief and plot my own course. I just didn't know how. A couple of failed attempts along the path, a couple startups that didn't get anywhere. And I was still drawing a paycheck from a higher education institution as the executive director of their foundation. And one of my fundraisers, actually, volunteers came to me and said, buy my business. I own this auto repair facility and it's on the ropes. I'm tired. I'm beat up. I've been doing it since 1969 and I'm done. And that just rang like a tuning fork. Something just started ringing that, because what your listeners and viewers don't know either is that I'm a car nut. I love cars. I build race cars. I build race motors. I race competitively in the summer months. I drag race. And so owning a car repair shop, that just kind of rang true. Put that in the back of my mind and started praying about it. Because as it says in James chapter 4, you can plan all you want for what tomorrow you're going to do, but until you say, if the Lord wills this, it's just vapor. So I started praying. Then I went to my spiritual barometer. That's my dear wife, Bonnie. And I laid it out before her. And she's the one who said first, I think we need to do this. And that was my first affirmation that maybe this isn't just another pipe dream. So a year later, I closed on the sale of a business that was on the ropes. But here's the thing, Barry, at 53 years old, I had done it, been down that road. I had walked the walk. I knew what I could do to revive this. And I was excited about the challenge. When most guys were probably starting to plan retirement, I'm thinking about stepping off the edge of the cliff. But you asked about mentors. There was one dear friend of mine who owns a multi-million-dollar manufacturing organization, and right here in our hometown. And I went to him and I said, John, I need godly counsel. I need you to lay this out for me. And he'd been walking with me in a number of other things as well. And for weeks we would meet and he'd say, what's the latest? Where are you at? Let me see those numbers. Give me those numbers. And he would parse them out with me. And with lots of prayer and due diligence and looking at the financials, doing our homework, I came away at the end of that with a signed purchase agreement. So it was not done lightly, and it was with a lot of work.
So you were laser focused on the numbers. He helped you understand those. Did you understand those types of numbers before he talked to you?
I understood financials. I could read a balance
Sure.
sheet and an income statement and a cash flow analysis. I could do that. But when this is going to be yours, that it takes on a whole different perspective. And so I was looking at the numbers and I wanted them to be good. I wanted them to support this. I wanted this. I was pretty sure that the king wanted me to have it, but so now we're just grinding it out. But it was John who said, sit down, stop, take off those rose-colored glasses. This business is on the ropes, buddy. You know that? Yeah, I knew that. Yeah. No, this business is going down. Are you ready for that? What are you going to do to revive it? What can you bring to the equation? What are you doing? And so it was those hard conversations that made me think, I think I know what I'm getting into now, really clear with a clear eye, but I also think I know how to bring it back. And that's when a business plan was drafted. I actually wrote one, and it became my blueprint for the revival of this company.
Yeah, I love that. We talk about the Bible, Luke 14, 28, 29, intending on building your tower, your house, count the cost.
Yep.
That goes into it. I'm glad you had somebody like that tells you that, right? Look, I work with entrepreneurs and salespeople every day, and I tell them it's math, not magic. Facts don't care about feelings. Everybody thinks that they're going to win, but you have to be laser focused on the numbers that prove that you have the odds to win. You can't guarantee success,
100%.
but you can stack the odds in your favor very heavily by numbers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just reading an interesting story about Bombardier, the Canadian conglomerate, and how the original family and then their successors almost drove that company into the dirt because they were more about feeling about their heritage, their legacy, the Bombardier legacy, and not so much about what was really happening in the numbers. It was a fascinating read about what can happen when you don't take off those glasses.
Yeah, absolutely. My original mentor, I never met him, but I call him my mentor, Zig Ziglar. He says, he goes, these ain't rose-colored glasses, but they ain't woes-colored glasses either. So you got to have this balance between everything is awesome and nothing is great.
Yeah, 100%.
And so you have optimism. People misunderstand optimism. And I'm like, it's not that you think everything is all going to work out. And as a matter of fact, if you read Good to Great, chapter 4, it's titled Confront the Brutal Facts, but Never Lose Hope. And it talks about the concentration camps and the prison camps. And it said that the optimists actually died in the prison camps. Whoa. You and I are not optimists. They thought they were getting out by Christmas. You're not getting out by Christmas. You go into this business. Your mentor said, hey, Greg, you're not getting out by Christmas. You take this on you are actually putting yourself in jail for a while.
Yeah.
You're not getting out by Christmas. Are you going to choose to take this on
Yeah.
because it's going to be a lot longer than Christmas,
Mm.
and your dream can be a nightmare? It goes back to your wife asking some questions, and you said, "Is this another pipe dream?" Are you the type of person that has a lot of dreams and pipe dreams? Where are you at there?
Oh man, so I'm an extrovert. I'm on the disc thing. I'm a high I with a close D, which is
Hey,
kind
me
of an
too.
odd. There you go. And so I understand who I am, and I understand sometimes I can get out ahead of my skis. And I was involved in a startup with my past father-in-law. He passed a number of decades, a decade or book now, but brought some marketing skill to that little company and learned a little bit about what that meant. But that wasn't really lighting my fire. But I mentioned earlier that I'm a drag racer. So one of the biggest boondoggles I was involved with was building my own drag strip in the metropolitan Minneapolis, St. Paul area. And me and a partner spent a ton of money and a lot of time. And it was a meticulously scratched out, typed out business plan about how we're going to build this world-class drag racing facility. And it was an example of how I was way out over my skis, but I wanted it so bad that, like you said earlier, Barry, the numbers, the facts didn't really matter. I was going to gut it out. I was going to make this happen. And all the while, the king is telling me, this isn't going to be good for you. I'll let you go down this rope. I'll give you enough road. I'll give you enough rope to hang yourself. But this is not what I want for you. It took me years and lots of money. And I realized we got to stop this. So we pulled the pin on it and licked our wounds and moved on. But it was a real learning experience for me, because it was the first time I was really in deep. And it cost. Fortunately, the king pulled me out before it ruined us, and I could still retire and be comfortable, but it was nip and tuck. That I took that experience into when I bought the auto repair shop.
Yeah, that's a good experience right there, right?
I went in there with a whole different, I still wanted it.
Yeah.
I'm wired the way I'm wired, but I also understood I got to find somebody who can help me see the forest for the trees, because I'm going to do it again.
Yeah. And so that's how you found him.
Yep.
So you started with your automotive repair shop. And what was your biggest struggle in the beginning?
Oh boy, sales. As you know, Barry, in that world, it's all about car count and ARO, or the average repair order. It's the first thing you look at. I knew the business was really, the customers were just fleeing, running everywhere else and not staying where they were. And so my real challenge was, okay, how do I restore customers? Where's my customer base? I'm not going to be able to bring back the people who have left. That's nearly impossible in that sector. So I had to make them out of whole cloth. And so I put on my marketing hat. I'm a pretty good marketeer. And I figured out how to build a product mix, a service mix that would entice and attract a whole new customer base, and started working on that. And that was my number one priority. I didn't work in the back. I've never made a living turning a wrench. I'm not a mechanic, even though I was Air Force trained to be an aircraft mechanic, and I love cars and can fix and darn near anything with four wheels and more. I never made a paycheck doing that.
Yeah.
So I hired the best people I could with the money that we had, and I started working on driving people in the front door.
Yeah. So you said you focused on getting a new, and we would call it a target client. So you had an avatar. Some people call it an avatar. Some people call it whatever you want, but you're number one client.
Yep.
You bought this business. Guy's been 1969. I think you were born in 69, right?
57.
57. Oh my gosh, man. Never mind. So you're 69. Things change. The model that he had is not the model that you want. All the things that we see normally. So now you've got to find a new client. What did this client look like?
Okay, that's a really big question. So I knew I didn't want to be the least expensive shop in town. I knew who those people were, and I didn't like the business model. But I didn't want to be one of the most expensive dealerships either, because they're known as having the highest overhead, the highest cost of entry. So I picked a number. To answer your question directly, I knew my demographic. I knew who I wanted to come through the front door. They had to have X number of dollars of income. I knew they had to live in certain houses. I knew they had to have certain material possessions, cars, boats, vacation homes. They had to have some discretionary income. They had to have a car that they cared about, and they wanted to spend money on that vehicle. And so I sketched out who that was. And then through the aid of Blig and some of their clientele, I started doing direct marketing, direct mail, and I started shotgunning, but not the whole city. I did it by carrier route. So I was very targeted. I know where these people live. I need to get a piece of mail in their hands. And I started target marketing in just very select carrier groups, and they started showing up.
Yeah. There's three things that I always talk to people about. I'm like, who are they? Where do they live? But most importantly, how do they think?
100%.
Because I've always been a top 20% of the marketplace guy. I don't care what I've sold. I'm looking for the top 20%. I always say, look, top 20% of people who have money will always have money.
Yep.
They don't care about price as much as they do freedom.
Exactly.
And when you start looking for the right people, then you can actually develop a sales process that works.
Yes.
And in that business, and I was a sales trainer in that business, and we operated a shop in that business.
Yes.
I called it worshiping at the altar of the car count. And so the first thing that you do when you go in and get business advice from most people, and they're well-meaning, but the low-hanging fruit is get more cars in. Now, if you're not a car repair person, this is get more customers in, talk to more people. Well, I can tell you that will exacerbate your problem.
Oh boy.
Because people who don't buy a lot don't buy a lot. And now you have a low revenue model.
Yes.
And you have all low revenue customers coming in, and they multiply like crazy.
And they bring you every headache on.
Yep. The people who pay the least complain the most. It's just, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
The people who pay the most complain the least. And as long as you're offering them, people who pay the most, they don't complain. They leave.
Yeah.
Silently and go somewhere else. They don't have time to complain.
Right.
And so I call it deeper, not wider. And a lot of people call it that. And one of my favorite clients, and he does recycling. He takes big cars and just eats them. He has a machine that eats them.
Yeah.
He calls it getting all the squeal out of the pig. So I know that's a little crude to some people's ears, but every time you get a customer in, and we call it cross-selling, who are the type of people who can buy everything that you have and will and have the money? And that's what you did. You started focusing on those people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And that was not the customer mix of the previous owner.
Oh, no, it rarely is. Most people, their plan is to do good work, which is great for people at a low cost. So they get the more people in when they begin, but 90% of business owners keep that model for the rest of their life. And then they wake up with a zoo on their hand. And the worse than having a zoo is having a nonprofit zoo. And that's what you get. And it's not just in the automotive world. It's everybody that I talk to for the most part. And so when we start to identify that person, that top 20% of marketplace, and then think about their experience and work that backwards. What do they want? And then give them that experience. That's what you do. How did you, once you started that marketing strategy, then what you have is you still have those people in. And did you have a process that maximized the sale to those people?
Boy, that's a good question. And that's going back 12 years. I do remember in the beginning, that first year or two, I was also a bit bashful about asking for the kind of revenue that I needed to get the job done and what I knew the business model required. So I was discounting, I was giving away free services, I was doing all of the coupons and that stuff. And then again, I credit a lot to Blig and John Waffler and you.
Oh yeah.
About opening my eyes to no. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. So you got to build value into what you do. And then whatever you deliver to that customer, it better stand up to that. So when I started doing that, I started raising my labor rate. It's antithetical. What? I raised my labor rate. I raised my prices on parts. I used a price matrix. I started becoming a little more sophisticated about how I assemble that. And then when customers would come in and say, you want to replace an alternator for what? I'd say, yeah, that's what it is. Mm-hmm. And you know what? They did it. And as long as I had quality product, quality people, quality delivery of the services that we provided, mm-hmm. and quality after the sale support, they came and stayed. And today I sold it on July 29th to one of my employees after mm-hmm. he worked for me for 10 years. I had a succession plan. And the customers that we built, we had an open house the farewell week, and just had hamburgers and brats and hot dogs outside the shop. The people that showed up and came up and hugged me, Barry, I fixed their car. Yeah. But they came up to me and they told me stories about nobody. I feel more cared for and more loved, and I feel a greater bond with my mechanic than I do with most professionals in my life.
That's so good. That's the experience economy, right? That's what backs that up. Yeah. And so then when you pair that with a great presentation.
Yes.
So you talked about cost versus value. I actually taught this to a group yesterday, mm-hmm. and we call it the price versus cost, right? Price is what you pay right now. Mm-hmm. The cost of something is what you're going to pay over time. So I ask people, have you ever bought something that you bought the cheapest version? We'll call them headphones. They didn't work really well. And then you decided, you're like, this doesn't work well. I'm going to go buy another pair of headphones that is higher quality. Mm-hmm. Now you've paid about 33% too much, right. Cost you more. Your experience is worse. And so it's really about return on investment, isn't it?
100%.
And so those are the questions you can ask your clients if you develop a great presentation. Because what you did was you said you stuck to your guns. And so one of the things that I tell people is one of the most important thing that you can be is be very certain.
Yes.
So you didn't have a lot of closing techniques or questions.
Yep.
You just were certain.
Yep.
Nope, this is it.
Yep.
And it worked. And then later, I think we developed a sales process that maximized it even more.
100%.
Is that what happened?
Yes, exactly. So the sales process became almost systematic. We utilized a company called Auto Vitals that revolutionized the way we did business with electronic tablet-based inspections, and then delivering that electronic inspection into we were standing head and shoulder. Nobody else in town is doing it. Well, there's one other shop that's doing it, but we were doing it far above what even dealerships were doing. We were getting customers who were leaving their dealerships with warranties still coming to us, because you guys just delivered so much more. And it was all part of that. Barry, became very systematic. The sales presentation was, here's what we're going to do. Welcome to GCA. It was Greg's Champion Auto. Yeah. Welcome to GCA. Today, we're going to inspect your car. We're going to look for this, and we're going to look for that. We're going to bring you a report with the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we're going to help you walk through so you understand everything about your car. We're not here to sell you anything. I'm here to show you where your car needs attention, and the choice, I'll help you prioritize. And it was also, it loses its transactional feel and becomes more of a relational feel. And customers warmed up to that. People who don't know anything about automotive repair, when they got done with the inspection and the walkthrough with my service advisor, they felt like, I get this. I don't know anything about cars, but I understand what I'm buying.
Yeah. We used to go, we're going to do 3 things for you. So our goal is to do 3 things for you. Number 1, repair your car to the highest, best value. We're going to help you make those decisions in the most affordable way. So what we're doing is we're looking for safety, reliability in the most affordable way.
Yep.
If we can do those 3 things, I think that you're going to be very happy.
Yep.
And of course they are.
Of course they are, because like you said before, they've been burned somewhere else. They went to
Mm-hmm.
another shop and now they're at my shop, and I'm not the cheapest. So they're going to pay more than they could have.
Yep.
But when they get done with their repairs at our shop, they're going to come back because they get what they wanted. They just want
Yeah.
somebody who cares and delivers quality.
The truth is that most customers feel burned by most companies
Yes.
in any industry, because
100%.
I call it promising the world and handing people a globe.
Yes.
Right now, for the younger people, a globe is a round object that used to use it. It's times have changed.
Yeah. Yeah. Look it up in
So
your
yeah, so that's fantastic. And so I think about where you are today. You are headed into your next adventure, right? You bought a business, so you started it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so there's 3 stages. So tell us where you are right now and where you're headed.
Okay. So right now I'm just taking a breather. Like I say, we closed on July 29th and it took a while. I worked for 45 years in different capacities. And Barry, I've never seen an unemployment check. I've never been without a job. And I thank the Lord for that. And yet when I pulled the pin on that, I was never so blindsided as I was the following Monday morning. My body clock got me up. It still does.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time,
Yeah.
I felt like I had to be somewhere. I had to go somewhere. I had to do something productive. I had to pour myself into this something. And so it took a while for the edge of that to come off. It's starting to now. I'm feeling comfortable about where I'm at right now. So what's next? As I mentioned in the outset, I've been teaching the Bible with Community Bible Study for 22 years. I just love this. And now I have the time to pour myself into the preparation more than I did before. I used to have to get up at 4:00 in the morning to get some of that done before the day because my day just consumed me. Now I'm leisurely about it. I'm developing more about how I approach that. So I'm appreciating that. I also have a couple ministry opportunities that are poking their head around the corner, and I'm seriously considering about getting involved with that. And we'll see. Like I said, it's not being retired. It's about being rewired.
I love that.
And I'm going to rewire myself. And my wife, my dear Bonnie, she and I are joined at the hip. I won't do anything without her involvement or her participation and her permission, frankly.
Yeah.
And we're just facing a new day. I can see 23 being lots of activity, lots of work, but I'm just not going to get a paycheck for it.
Yeah. I like the Proverbs 31, right? Yeah. I experienced that today. I joke that my wife, she quit her nurse practitioner side hustle
Side hustle.
to work for our business full time. And it's been about 7 months now. And man, it has taken off. She's the right person, right seat, we call it. And with her skill set of being organized, that you have to be a provider, seeing little kiddos, process is important.
Yeah.
And our process has gone through the roof. Revenue's gone through the roof. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. And so the Proverbs 31, the virtuous woman, right? The virtuous wife.
Yeah.
It's amazing. The helpmate.
Yep.
The next thing is now you're mentoring these young people, or maybe young, old, doesn't matter, in your ministry right now.
Yep.
Every day.
Yeah, 100%. And when I was still engaged with GCA, ministry opportunities came up constantly. And one of them was called God's Garage. So once a quarter, we would have a $10 oil change on Saturdays for folks in our community that were really down and getting beat up. And the last thing people spend their money on is auto repair when they are choosing between groceries, prescriptions, and things. Yeah. So the car would go way too long in neglect. So we started God's Garage. A friend of mine from church and I started this thing where all the volunteers came from our church, and my employees gave up their Saturdays to come back to the shop and change oil, do rudimentary inspections for people who can only pay $10. And what's grown out of that, Barry, is ministry opportunities. I've run into people. In fact, I'm engaged with a young lady right now who came for the $10 oil change. And the conversation that took place because my role is up front, I don't change the oil even then. I've never turned a wrench.
Me neither.
I
Know that,
said,
right? We had the
yeah,
same deal.
yeah, I knew that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I stayed up front and I listened, slow to speak, quick to listen. And I listened to her story and I heard about these challenges she's had since moving up here to the frigid Northland from Florida. And my heart just burned. And Bonnie and I both are still working with her to get herself in a good place again. A 46-year-old widow, her story would just break anyone's heart. And so that, Barry, who am I mentoring? I'm mentoring her. I'm mentoring others that came through that, who still reach out to me and say, Greg, can we meet for a cup of coffee? I just need some discernment. I need some wisdom here. And that up. And I'm excited about what I'm going to be able to build into some of these people.
And that's your unique ability. I know it 100%. So that's good. So I'm going to give you, I think that business is in 3 stages. Is stage number 1 is your startup.
Yep.
Stage number 2 is your growth stage. And then stage number 3 is your scalable stage, your scale stage. And you've been through all 3 of them. So you're going to teach us all right now. So what's the number 1 advice that you're going to give someone in their startup stage?
In your startup stage, be real. And as we said at the beginning, you come into an opportunity and you think you've done your due diligence. You think you've parsed it all out. During that startup phase, sometimes you have to be quick to adapt. You have to redraft that business plan every other week. Sometimes once a week, you're adding a new chapter or throwing one away. Be adaptable in that stage. Don't be so regimented that no, this doesn't fit my business plan as the way. You've got to be flexible and be willing to roll with it. So during that startup phase, boy, you've got to be super flexible. And also during that startup phase, don't be bashful about reaching out for people to give you some assistance. That friend who mentored me as I was entertaining the idea stayed with me. And I would go to John all the time and say, John, I just got thrown another left curve. Where is this coming from? Settle down. Let's walk through this. And I'm a great copycat. Here's an example. Before I knew what Blig was, I was reading one of our trade rags. And I learned about a top 10 auto repair shop that was up in the Twin Cities, which is about an hour and 20 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. And I saw his name and I called him.
Who is it?
Oh,
it's not Matt.
No, I know. No, Village. No, that's Matt.
Oh, Rich?
Yes, Rich Faring. I called Rich and I said, Rich, I'm not a competitive threat to you. I'm in Mankato. I'm a great copycat. I've just read this astounding story about your shop. Can I come up and shadow you for a while?
Yeah.
And he was more than gracious. He opened his books. He walked me through it. Rich just laid it all out. And I shadowed him. And I tell you something, it was such an eye opener during that implementation stage. I went back to Mankato and my head was just swimming.
Yeah.
And that ability to be adaptable and don't think you've got it all figured out.
Rich's meeting was my first meeting as a business coach, as a sales coach. It was my first official was Rich Fearings, and I've helped him with his people some, and it's good. I love Rich. He is I love him because we talked about the disc. He's a very high D.
Mm-hmm.
You don't mess with Rich Fearing. Yep. You better be a certain type of human to have a relationship with Rich, and I'm that guy, right? You're that person.
Yep.
And I love it. Yep. Yeah, that's good. So now, how about the growth stage?
That's managing. So by then I had surrounded myself with some of the best technicians. I had hired my first full-time service advisor. I had a half-time accountant bookkeeper so during the growth stage, you have to start to focus. I knew what I was good at. I knew I was good with sales, customer acquisition, and marketing. I knew how to build this thing, but everything else was going to serve as a distraction and I was going to be off point. So I actually, at a time when I probably couldn't really afford it, I hired the right full-time people.
That's good.
And I started trusting that these people know what they're doing. I've invested in them. They're highly trained, highly skilled. I'm going to let them do what they do. And I'm going to focus on what I know how to do. And I started managing growth. We were growing at 20, 30, 40%. And the growth was so rapid. My car count, as you said, was just going from bump, 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 bump. Okay, now I've got to be able to manage this. So I started implementing procedures and SOPs, standard operating procedures, to manage all the various scenarios. Okay, if this happens, I'm going to do this. If that happens, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go here. That's when the real management hat came on. And you've got to be keen about letting people do what they do and get out of their way. I don't micromanage them. Your growth will shrink if you don't let them do that.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to talk to people is about, you lead people. You manage process.
Oh, yeah.
If you try to manage people,
No.
people are crazy. I'm crazy. You're crazy. We're all a little crazy. You start managing people, you're going to get chaos.
Yep.
And that's good advice. So you got to learn how to let go and let people do their job and not micromanage and know that they're not going to do exactly the way you're doing it.
Yep.
But if they can keep it 80% there, you're going to get it. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. And you have to be good with that. You have to be okay with that 80%. I'm an ID, so there's a lot of D in me. And you just ask my friends, they'll say, Greg, he's a dictator. You don't really know me well. But anyway, so when they're off in that 20% realm, I had to bite my tongue. I had to hold back. I had to go to them and say, I wouldn't quite do it that way. Please explain why we're in this territory. And after I understood where their mind was at, okay, all right, go. I just didn't want to reel it back in.
Yeah, that's good. So now we've gotten past the growth stage. Now we need some advice for our scalers.
Now is when you have to be smart. Now is when you have to be happy with 5% growth. You have to be happy with 7% growth. Now is when you start fine tuning. Now is when you start asking yourself, all right, gross profit on parts, I need that to go from here to here. How do I get that without alienating my customer base? How do I do that without messing everything else up? So then it becomes, like you say, scaling. Then it becomes very surgical. What do I need?
That's a good word.
What do I need to drop? What can I bring in without throwing everything off on the curb? And how do I implement this now in little bites? And that was the most, I so loved that stage of the business and watching it work. The average repair order went, when I bought the shop, for those who are listening who don't know this, every repair shop has a number. It's called the ARO, average repair order. As its name implies, you add what you got for an oil change, you add what you got for a major repair and divide by 2, and that's your average repair. My ARO went from like $200, $190, to when I sold the business, it was over $800.
Nice. That's huge. And what happened to your gross profit and your net profit when that happened?
They escalated. They took off. My gross, I was grossing 60, 62, 65%, and I was netting close to 15%. I know the bogey is 20, but we were on pace for record net, gross revenue, record net revenue. What a wonderful time to hand it off to a new owner too, when it's like, hey, hold on to the reins because these horses are going to pull. And it was that fine tuning. That's what you're doing in that last stage. And then don't get complacent. That's the other thing. Don't go to sleep. Don't think now I can go to that vacation home. Nope. No, you don't start thinking about how you can take it easy because the machine is so well oiled, because one of those gears is going to wear out and you got to figure out how to replace it.
I love that. Yeah, that is good advice. Like, hopefully you take your notes, and you're talking about average sale, right? Average sale per visit, average sale per customer. That's translatable. You know, I've often asked people, I'm like, so what if you doubled your price and you got half your customers left? What would happen to what would happen? And oftentimes they're like, we'd make the same money. I'm like, no, you'd have the same revenue.
Right.
But the money that you make and keep will
Yep.
be infinitely more.
Yep.
And you may not be able to double your revenue, but you can raise your price.
Yes.
And if you raise it 15% and 15% of your clients leave, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And one of my mentors, I get coached by strategic coach now. And Dan Sullivan, he says all the genius stuff that you can say today. And he said how he sets price, and I've been doing this, is what scares you and then add 20%.
Oh, man.
The first time I did that, it went well. No one said no.
Yeah.
And then I did it again.
Yeah.
And then I did it again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. And I tell people, I'm a sales coach, trainer. It is not true that those, in my case at least, that those who can't do teach.
Mm-hmm.
Look, you've been around me for a while, Greg. I can sell.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell you, I have problems raising my own price because I'm a human too.
Absolutely.
And so we need people that will push us, even especially in what we know, because the curse of knowledge is a real thing. And as a sales trainer, you can get up and you can wow people with what you can do in sales, and people will listen because they don't know. And they're like, holy crap, I've never heard anybody say it like this.
Yeah.
Same thing. When people listen to this, they're going to say, oh my gosh, that Greg guy, he makes it just sound so easy. And he makes it sound simple, but it is not easy. The way Greg grew made it look that way, but we have to have people in our lives that know just a little more than us, been a little different than us, so that we can mentor and grow. Is that correct?
Absolutely. The best thing that can happen to your listener is they go out and find someone who knows more than you, has been down the path a little bit longer than you, come up alongside of them and say, I think you have something that I could really learn and benefit from. Would you mind? Could we go for coffee? Could I meet with you once a month? I just want to pick your brain and find out, wow, you really don't know everything. Mm-hmm. And then be willing to buy that. But it doesn't make a hill of beans to approach somebody with all the wisdom of Solomon and you go home and sit on it.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't implement.
There's actually a Hebrew word called chokmah.
Mm-hmm.
People say knowledge is power. It is not. It's potential for power. Knowledge, and chokmah means knowledge, applied knowledge.
Correct.
It actually means skill with applied knowledge.
Yes.
So that is power. And it's not as catchy. Chokmah is power. But it is. In knowledge, though, there's a ton of people who just sit around, and I'd rather have somebody who just a hard worker. Yeah. I think about my son, and there's a book called Grit by Angela Duckworth. And I said, if there's one word that I would describe my son as, is gritty. Mm-hmm. That kid never gives up. He works hard. He actually, just so you know, he's going into theology and got a scholarship in golf. And super proud of him. Yeah. He's the right human, and I'm lucky to be his dad. Mm-hmm. So that's incredible. And so what you're saying is get someone smarter than you, it can just be a little smarter, and just do what they say.
Yeah. That was one of the things that the toughest pill for me to swallow when I signed on with the Blig thing, sitting in my first Blig meeting and listening to these auto repair owners from around the country in a round table, bearing their souls, outlining their financial, laying it all out there. I sat there thinking, what am I doing? And then they turn and they go around the table and they come to me and they're just beating me up. They're asking, well, why do you do it that way? Why do you think that way? Why aren't you doing it this way? And I thought, there's wisdom in this room. Yes. These people have been there, done that, and bought the t-shirt and sold it again. Why am I not paying attention to this?
Yeah.
Implement.
When I got into the Blig group, I like to say it this way. I was behind on my dreams and my bills. And those people, John Waffler, Dan Gilly is one of my greatest mentors. Yep. I worked for him for a while, and I tell people, and I told him this. I said, I wish I would have listened to you more. I listened to him, but he became like a dad to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
whatever, Dad.
Yeah. So it's so good. So now I listen to him more than when I work for him.
Mm.
He still mentors me and calls me. We have a great relationship.
Yep.
So that's good. Any last parting words that you want to say?
Whatever you do, make sure you're passionate about it. Passion.
Mm.
I'm passionate about cars. Okay, that's guilty.
Yeah.
But being able to be affiliated with my passion and I didn't go to work anymore. Got up in the morning and I raced to get to my job because I enjoyed so much. I was connected to my passion. What a thing to be involved with a great entrepreneurial pursuit. And by all human markers, you're very successful, but you dread it in the morning. Make sure that it aligns with your passion.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is the unexamined life is not worth living. Not getting down with your passion. You have an unexamined life. And that was Socrates. So don't quote me on it.
100p.
Yeah. I love it. Greg, appreciate you coming here, being on my podcast. It's flown. So appreciate you. You have a great day.
You too, brother. And let's stay in touch.
Let's do it.